going on? It's Kevin Kenny. This is the Build Series live from New York City, and happy New Music Friday. It's an exciting week. We like music here. And what better way to kick off New Music Friday with a band who's got a brand new record called Pep Talks out that you should absolutely listen to right after you watch this episode of Build. Let's give it up for Judah and the Lion. How are you, fellas?
Doing well. How are you?
Well, just well.
We're
It's album release.
We're great.
We're freaking
There you
stoked.
go. You're supposed to be excited for the folks at home. No, this is actually really cool. It's finally out and available everywhere. Pep Talks. Can we bring that music video back, by the way, in the back? We were watching it here in the studio for those live. But I want to walk through this because there's a lot to unpack with this album. But I talked to you guys earlier this week all about the music, and we'll get into the music here. But I want to talk about the visuals because we haven't had a chance to do so. Why set this at a school? There's something, there's a nostalgic feel to the aesthetic of this music video. Was that on purpose?
Yeah, we wanted to feel like an old, like almost old timey, like pep rally, like music video type thing. And the idea we had with kind of like waking up, it's like you kind of find yourself like in these isolated situations or whatever, drowning, and then there's that shot in the bridge where it's like completely wet, and it's like you just kind of came up from like a dream or something like that.
Right.
And the whole song is kind of like just feeling overwhelmed at life and being out of control in life. And so the idea is like we're all kind of in those moments of isolation or whatever. And sometimes that can just be in our heads. But you kind of come to yourself in knowing that you're not at the end.
Awesome. Yeah, if you haven't seen the video at home, it kind of builds up into this great like gym performance at the end. It's like a more positive Smells Like Teen Spirit, you know what I mean? It's like a less grungy, like that's the vibe that I got.
That was definitely like one of the inspirations for this music video for sure.
Totally. I don't know if I'm reading too much into this stuff, but you know, we'll get into what led to this record, but it's been a heavy time in your guys' life. It's been a time of contemplation and searching inward. I find personally like something that grounds me when I go through those times is like kind of going back to my childhood and thinking about who I really am. Is there anything to be said about like this being set in high school and that tying into a parallel at all, or am I just?
I think so. And with the record being called Pep Talks, we kind of wanted to revolve like kind of our world that we're trying to create with this record around kind of a pep rally theme.
Right.
So that's where kind of the sports idea came from. And us as a band, like we love sports. We're all kind of like sports people in our own ways, and kind of wanted to bring that world into our music and into our tour and into our record for this one.
Pep Talks is also the first song on the record, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I got to see that earlier this week. You guys did a really cool intimate performance here in New York, and I was just so struck by the community of your fans. I mean, these people knew every word to every song, and they were like people. I didn't want to say it at the time, but like people were like crying. Like people were like, I mean, good tears. These were happy tears. But the Pep Talks, that actually is born out of this desire. You guys wanted to make like your own fan chant for shows, right?
We did.
Yeah.
We a lot of times like after our shows, instead of like calling for an encore, our fans will be like, any sports chants, they'll be like, oh, 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 oh. That's all I'll sing after that. But it's kind of like this moment where they're not like really clapping; they just start the sports chant. So we were like, man, we should just come up with our own chant, so it becomes like our fan chant, hopefully, so they can just chant that instead of another sports one. So we'll see if it works. We haven't tried it yet.
Nate, what was the creative process of coming up with the right fan chant?
Well, it was actually one of the first things we did. So we recorded most of the record last summer. We were actually in the studio about a year and a half ago. I'm working on Pep Talk and Why Did You Run? And so those were two of the earliest things we did, along with Over My Head. We were writing that, but didn't start recording it until a little bit later. But so it's definitely like at the forefront of our mind, even before the whole concept of the record started coming through. That was an idea that we had that we wanted to figure out how to integrate. And so, yeah, I guess we just put a lot of time and attention into that. Had some friends in from college to play horns and kind of try and help us figure out how to make it more of a, I guess, pep band kind of vibe. And,
yeah.
So it's cool. It also took, we got to re-edit it and work through it more and more over the summer and just put a lot of thought through it. So
totally
about how it turned out.
Yeah. The record is largely you guys. Is the only feature Casey?
John Bellion is also on.
John Bellion. All right, cool. Let's talk collaborators really quick. There's a great story of how Casey Musgraves, who's having a heck of a year right now, of course, she's on a song called Pictures, which is an absolutely gorgeous song. Brian, can you tell me how that sort of came to be, you guys and Casey?
Yeah, we don't really know how it happened, but it did. It was all actually pretty seamless, and we both live in Nashville, and when we finished the song Pictures, it was kind of evident like this could be really cool for Casey's voice. We're all big fans of her, and so we just reached out and asked, and for some reason she said yes, and then she came. She got back from a tour and came into the studio one of those days, and Judah and her laid down the vocals, and yeah, it was awesome. It was good timing, I guess, because right before she won all her Grammys.
Yeah, exactly. Works out well. Well executed, gentlemen. Judah, you grew up playing sports. Did you play baseball in college?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm curious, when you go and you're about to do a duet with somebody like Casey Musgraves, does it remind you at all about like preparing for an opponent, or like you know what I mean? No, but like not in the sense that it's adversarial, but like do you see any parallels between like trying to rise to the occasion of a big game, let's say in sports, and then wanting to sing just as good as Casey on a song?
I would never try to sing just as good as Casey. Yeah, she took like 1 or 2 takes. I took a little bit more than that. I think that the competitive nature kind of comes in like at festivals. As you're seeing other bands and you're seeing other sets, and you're like, man, I want to beat that energy. I want to beat that. And it's like a beautiful competition. It's not like I want to rip your throat out, that kind of college baseball brings.
That's so dramatic.
Unhealthy way. But it's kind of like more that's where more the competitive nature comes out. Whether it's good or bad, in me, it's like I want to beat that set. That set was amazing. How do we top that thing that they do?
Totally. Well, maybe it's more of like a dancing partner when Casey's there with you, right?
Yeah, it's more like a teammate.
Yeah.
Like I would rather just pass her the ball and let her shoot.
Yeah, exactly. All the shots you want, Casey.
Yeah, I will be the assist guy. Be a team player all day with Casey.
The John Stockton of pictures on
Exactly.
the record. So you talk about Casey Musgraves in the world of country, and she's doing cool things in the world of country, but she would probably be deemed by most a country artist. And then you got John Bellion, who's really a cool, sort of like experimental pop almost. And you guys have always been known for that of mixing genres. But how did John come into the picture?
So we opened for 21 Pilots and John a couple years ago, and just became really good friends with him and his whole squad, and just have kept up. And we were so inspired by what he did and the show that he put on, but mostly by who he is as a person. He's just the most down to earth. What you see is what you get, no matter what. And we just super appreciated that, and have always, liked how he kind of pushes boundaries and tries new things. And as we were writing that song, it just sort of, in the same way that it felt like perfect for Casey to come be on this song if it was possible, it was just like, John is the guy for this. Let's try for it, and
Totally.
ended up working out.
Is it always work that way where you meet an artist and you kick it, you hit it off personally, you get along as people, and does that always translate musically, or does sometimes you get in the studio and you're like, this doesn't really link up?
I don't think it always translates. I think after, especially if you know their music before you meet them, meeting them and getting to know them brings a new perspective. I think I've learned from touring with tons of different bands. Like, for one example I think of is I didn't really listen to Incubus too much growing up, and then when we went on tour with them, it kind of brought this whole perspective of like an understanding of what they were doing and who they are as people that made me appreciate their music all that much more.
You talk about Incubus or not listening to Incubus. What did you guys listen to growing up? And I ask this because we had probably casual Judah in the line, fans watching right now that are learning about you guys right now. Talk about the influences, because I mean, like, the old album was folk, hop, and roll, and that kind of, I think, summarizes all of your different genres. But yeah, what did you grow up listening to?
My parents are in the symphony in Colorado, and so I grew up, being very just around classical music. But I would say the first genre I really fell in love with was metal. Got really into that in middle school, and punk kind of followed along with that, and then eventually got introduced to bluegrass.
Wow.
And now I guess if you catch me listening to something now, it's probably EDM. So that's
Wow.
what I'm.
And he plays the banjo.
Yeah. Figure that out. I'm curious, when you got into bluegrass and you were coming from like the punk metal scene, was there anything similar? Because I first thought that it would have nothing to do with each other, but like, what attracted you to both?
So Nickel Creek was the first group that I heard that really attracted me to the bluegrass world. And I love the fast, melodic, rhythmic pacing of metal music. It just kind of triggers something in my brain that I love. And when I heard Chris Thiele playing, I think it was When in Rome by Nickel Creek was the first song. And it just was like, these guys are shredding, and it is awesome.
Yeah.
And my mom was in the kitchen. She's like, listen to more of that. I actually want to listen to this. Like, please play more of that. And it just became, I fell in love with it. It just kind of changed my world and gave me a new perspective. And then John Butler was also a guy that, he was making acoustic guitar sound like something I'd never heard before. And just, I don't know, just strumming chords was kind of, just didn't hit me enough. But when people would come up with these crazy, melodic, fast ideas, it just really excited me. And I was like, it doesn't have to just be a loud, distorted guitar to do that. And
Totally.
got a new perspective on it.
Judah, what did you listen to growing up?
I also was very influenced by my parents. In my dad's car with all my, like, quote-unquote jock friends, anywhere from, like, 50 Cent, Eminem, Paul Wall, all the good
A
stuff.
lot of hip-hop.
A lot of rap. Like Get Rich or Die Trying by 50 Cent's probably my favorite record of all time still.
Wow.
And then in my mom's car was more like kind of the classics like Tom Petty, Queen, REO Speedwagon, R.E.M., those type of bands. I guess as a kid, I really found myself really loving like Switchfoot and Goo Goo Dolls and bands with like these very anthemic melodies and that you can kind of like, I don't know, that make you kind of feel like as a kid, especially like you feel like you're like on top of the world or like living in a movie or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that kind of that cross between like rock, classic rock, and then the hip hop.
Did you ever think about being a rapper at any point?
Well, yes, I really wanted to be a rapper growing up. So much so I dyed my hair and then shaved it. I looked like Eminem kind of growing up.
Did you bleach it?
I bleached it. It wasn't intentional. It was just a really bad bleach job. So I ended up just shaving it. And then in the days of Slim Shady, you just kind of like,
Yeah, that was the look.
I ended up being like the fake Slim Shady.
You did not stand up.
I didn't stand up whenever. But yeah, I used to have this like notepad full of, I called them poem raps as a 5-year-old. And that's kind of where the name of the band came up. My mom was like, well, if you ever actually had a band with your rap group, you can call it the Line of Judah or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's so tough. I want to be like a lion. And then when we started the band, it was like, this name kind of stuck with me.
That's awesome.
So shout out to Judah Chris. That's my rapper name.
Judah Chris. I love that. Brian, what did you listen to growing up there?
Yeah, I started from a young age learning piano and really loved like Billy Joel, Ben Folds, like learning those guys' songs and trying to hear them and play them on the piano. And then into high school, I was more in like the rock phase of like the Format and Bright Eyes, some of like the more angsty like songwriters. And then like around the same time that I met these guys was when I started diving into mandolin and bluegrass and Punch Brothers, Nickel Creek, and just kind of like I grew up in Chicago, so I didn't really know what a mandolin was until I moved to Tennessee. And that kind of, my love for that just grew from there.
Right on. Are you an R.E.M. fan at all? I always think like mandolin with R.E.M.
I don't dislike R.E.M.,
All right.
but I would say that was more like Judah's
That's me in the corner.
There you go.
thing.
Let's run through this record because what's kind of cool about this is a lot of bands come on Build and it's like ahead of the record, so it's not that actionable when you're watching it, but you can literally stream this thing or buy this thing after you're done watching today. Can you give me your favorite song? I know it's probably tough, but maybe just a song at the top of mind right now you'd love to talk about.
I think Queen songs and Human is probably my favorite right now. Particularly the back half of it. I'm not as much a lyric guy. The whole song as a whole just I think is important to both sides. But the back half, Brian wrote the instrumental. And it's just something that we've never really had the opportunity to do before. The whole song is like 8.5 minutes. I don't think we've ever released a song more than 4 minutes. And just to really put something like that together and the time and thought and melodic aspect that went into it, it's just something I'm really proud of. And the emotion behind it, it's kind of the turning point of the record. I'm starting to push into the hope section after dealing with all the pain and what's been going on. And it's every time I listen to it, it still just really hits me. And I'm so proud of this record for so many reasons. But the fact that it really gets me, I just can't wait to see how it gets other people and what they think of it. And yeah, just props to, I guess, Judah and Brian for both aspects of that. But
Yeah.
it's really cool.
You too, dude.
Hey, thanks, man.
Thanks, dude.
I think my favorite song is a song called "I'm Okay," and the song was kind of birthed out of me going to like my therapist and kind of in the middle of the season where I honestly internally was probably feeling a bit sadder or a bit had more like anxiety or whatever than I had experienced in my life up to that point. I'm not a very anxious person, but in this season I feel like I experienced that for the first time. And I was at this like meeting with my therapist, counselor, whatever you call it, and it was this point where I'd kind of like gone and kind of told him my story the past like few years, and he just kind of looked at me and was like, you haven't really changed your emotion on your face, since you've kind of started telling me this painful story. And in that moment, like I figured out that I was actually like BSing my counselor. Like I was trying to prove, I was like there to obviously get help, but I was also trying to prove to him that I was like good, like I was cool. I had it together, and in that moment I just lost it. So the song is actually like lyrically, it's just kind of like it takes on this journey of like this kind of like a major happy start. It's like I'm okay, and then it kind of slows down a bit in the bridge with kind of a more of like a minor feel, and then Judah Chris pops out and does kind of this like rap that's like more like I'm not doing good, but there's like so much freedom in saying that, and like the like recovery or whatever, like admitting to yourself in those seasons of maybe doubt or whatever, or depression, anxiety, whatever you're struggling with. There's so much freedom in just being honest with it.
Do you ever feel like you weren't being honest with these guys throughout that whole process?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that the catalyst was really just that counseling session?
Yeah, amongst other things.
Yeah.
I think I mean these guys would call me out for it for sure too. It's just like I think it's just being aware. It's like when you're honestly a lot of it came out with people like just physically. So like, man, I was like probably having my own version of like panic attacks, like having trouble breathing or like throwing up before things that I would never do. So it was almost like my body was reacting to it instead of my head or whatever. So when those things started kind of happening a little bit more consistently, it was like, oh, something internally is like struggling. And yeah, definitely like I was always kind of a good faker, or could be in those seasons. But I think there's definitely a couple of those moments that have happened that have allowed me to be like, I was not doing good, and that's okay.
Yeah. Let's end it here with Brian on a favorite record or song off the record. Excuse me.
Yeah. I'm going to say Don't Mess With My Mama. It's a song that we got to play live for the first time last night. And when we make records, we always try to, like, one of the first things we think of is how is this going to go over in a live setting or at a festival. And it might be like one of the most out there songs that we've ever created. It's very almost EDM in our own way, but yeah, that's my favorite.
Nice, guys. We're going to turn it over to our studio audience for a couple questions here before we wrap up, and the first is going to come from front row.
Yeah. Hey guys. This record is just such a gift of like vulnerability and hope, and an invitation to dance through your struggles. So I guess I was just wondering if there's like a specific record that y'all go to when you are struggling with things. Like I know y'all talked a little bit about your influences and your favorite records growing up, but just if that's a different answer.
For me right now, it's a record by Andrew Bayer, his most recent release. And it's just the vibe for me is each song is really, I love that it's like 6 to 8 minutes per song because it really allows for the motion to build and kind of ride out this wave. It just has been really helpful for me to, been putting it on every morning when I wake up and trying to go to bed and listening to that. And it just kind of welcomes me into the day and then takes me out, and just a calm, exciting, just kind of it's all going to be all right sort of vibe. So I would super recommend. checking out his stuff. It's really cool. Particularly the song Tidal Wave is my favorite.
It's a really good one. For me, over the past few years, I've really gravitated towards Frightened Rabbit. The band that they're a Glasgow band. Kind of a little bit of a tragic thing happened. Their lead singer committed suicide. I guess a year and some change ago. But Scott, the lead singer, he had such a beautiful way of just being so like almost like hurt your heart honest with the way that he wrote songs. And my favorite record of theirs is called The Winner of Mixed Drinks. And he just dives into his addiction and his struggles and the way that it affects other people. And like he was so like self-aware and he like knew his weaknesses and knew like what he struggled with, but he would like put it on a platter for you to like just examine. But the music behind it was so positive. It's like everything's like kind of in major, and it's like I'm a sucker for just like anthemic, beautiful like melodies, and with this like beautiful Scottish voice, it just like it just comes across really genuine and vulnerable. And I think whenever I'm kind of feeling in that headspace of feeling sad or whatever, that's like one of the records I really cling to.
One of my favorites is Are You Alone by Magical Clouds. It's kind of like I don't know if y'all have seen the TV show The OA, but it almost reminds me of that. It's like very ethereal, and it's really an album about love, but like painted in such a beautiful way. And it's really kind of a calming album for me and one that I love.
Great question. Next up.
Hey guys, I'm Callow from Nebraska. What is the inspiration behind Why Did You Run?
Yeah, Why Did You Run kind of came at a place, and I think that song and Over My Head were written like first. So that's always special within a record. I feel like those first couple songs kind of help lead the direction of a record. It's like, okay, this is kind of what we have. Not that we didn't want any song on the record to sound the same, but it's special having those early ones kind of come. But that song kind of came at a place where I was having a hard time really talking about what was going on with my parents, just in everyday life. Like it was a struggle for me to even tell my best of friends, like, hey, this is my mom's really struggling with alcoholism, or I feel like my dad's kind of like doing his own version of like running away from our family, and I don't really know how to I don't know how to react to that. And so that song kind of came at two different places where I kind of personally just felt so isolated and alone in the world, and I felt like the two people that were two anchors in my life were no longer anchors for me, and trying to figure that out and figure out why they were running from me or from our family was just so hard for me to understand. But singing it was so much different than talking about it. So it's like it was so much easier for me to just sing it and just be like, this is what it is, and then use that outlet to talk about it, if that makes sense. And so Why Did You Run kind of came, and it kind of gave me the freedom to talk about it for the first time, which was really a beautiful thing for me. And then also, we wanted to make it a dance, like kind of a dance song. It's because I think, like me as a kid, being maybe the jock kid growing up that I was, if I got really mad or angry after a game or upset about somebody stealing my toy or whatever as a kid, I don't know what makes you upset as a kid, but I would go like punch a wall or like punch like a locker room, just get really angry and get really just like almost like fuming, like passionate. And I channeled that energy into dancing, like instead of hurting my hands, because I didn't want to hurt my hands because I was playing sports. And so instead, like when my first dog died or whatever, I would go up in my room after that moment. I went up to my room and just like blared, I think it was like Switchfoot or something, and just started just dancing around my room. My parents probably thought I was psychotic, but we wanted this sad song lyrically and this narratively like kind of painful song to be like a song that people could dance to. And I think sometimes like through pain or whatever, dancing is a way that you're almost physically choosing to hope and choosing to move forward.
Good questions. We're running out of time here, but you guys are going on tour, and I want to talk about this really quick. You're going to be here in the fall. Is it Terminal 5?
Terminal 5, yep.
Great. I got a good memory.
September 20th.
20th.
Yeah? Wow. You have a better memory. What is the tour going to entail?
Lots of good stuff.
Well, I'm saying this is nationwide. This is where you're kicking off. The details here.
We are starting in middle of July, doing a couple weeks in Europe, and then we'll come back here, play Lollapalooza, and then do a U.S. run mid-August through early November.
Nice.
Going all over the
Available
place.
at Judah.
JudahAndTheLion.com.
There you go. Wasn't taken. Sometimes you got to add like an official or something on that
Oh,
URL.
no, we were
handled.
early.
Yeah.
Went for it.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for coming by. And again, congratulations. Pep Talks is out and available everywhere. One more time for Judah and the Lion.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.